There is a very specific, universally understood look that people get when they are trying to speak a second language.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You've probably seen it, or maybe you felt yourself doing it. The conversation is flowing, it comes to you, and suddenly there is this agonizingly awkward pause.
Dreaded pause.
Right. Your eyes dart up and to the left. Your face just kind of freezes. And to the person sitting across from you, it is practically visible. They can actually see the gears grinding in your head.
Yeah, you can practically hear the machinery.
Exactly. You are desperately rifling through mental filing cabinets, trying to translate a thought from your mother tongue into this new language. And it feels like you were reading a textbook inside your own mind, translating word by grueling word just to order a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and that mental textbook phenomenon, well, that is the absolute definition of cognitive overload. Your brain is essentially running 3 separate software programs simultaneously.
Wow, 3.
Yeah, listening, then translating, and then formulating a response in reverse. It's incredibly exhausting.
And today we're looking at a piece from the Commute English podcast that argues this exhaustion isn't a symptom of you just being bad at languages. It's actually a symptom of a fundamentally broken strategy.
Completely broken, yeah.
So we are going to dismantle what the source calls the internal translator trap, because the goal, it isn't to get faster at translating in your head. The goal is to stop translating entirely.
Right, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, it fundamentally changes how we view fluency. What the source establishes right out of the gate is this really crucial premise.
Which is?
Well, fluency is not actually about the sheer volume of vocabulary words you've memorized. You could memorize a massive bilingual dictionary and still completely freeze up in a cafe.
Oh, totally. I think we've all been there.
Right. True fluency is about a complete language-brain remodel. It is entirely about the biological mechanisms of how your brain stores those words and, the specific neural pathways it relies on to access them.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because I think for the listener, as someone who loves acquiring knowledge efficiently and wants those practical aha moments without the information overload, the core problem here is that middleman.
Yes, the middleman is the issue.
You hear a word, you translate it to your native language to understand it, you formulate your response in your native language, and then you translate that back.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for the traditional ways we learn? Because I want to push back on this premise right away. We've all been taught to use standard bilingual dictionaries since we were in middle school, right?
Oh, sure. Target word on the left, native word on the right.
Right. And to me, using a dictionary feels like a slow internet connection. You are routing your mental data through too many external servers before it reaches the screen. So is the dictionary just slowing down the connection?
Well, actually, it's worse than just slowing it down. You are actively building the wrong type of infrastructure.
Wait, really? The wrong infrastructure?
Yeah. It's like building an elaborate highway detour that you're eventually going to have to tear down anyway. Every time you use a bilingual dictionary, you are actively training your brain to become a world-class translator, not a native speaker.
Oh, wow. I never thought about it like that.
Think about the biological mechanism at play when a native English speaker hears the word apple. They do not see the letters A-P-P-L-E in their mind. They experience the physical object.
Right. They see the red skin. They hear the crunch of taking a bite.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is that true fluency means linking the auditory sound of the word directly to those sensory details.
The color, the crunch, the smell.
Yes, the sweetness, all of it. The neural pathway shouldn't go from the English word to your native word and then to the concept. It should go directly from the new sound to the concept itself. You are trying to bypass the native language centers of your brain entirely.
But wait, I have to stop you there, because the source suggests using Google Images instead of a dictionary to bypass this middleman.
Right, the visual approach.
Yeah, so if you are reading an article in your target language and you don't know a word, you highlight it, drop it into Google Images, and look at the grid of photos. But, if I'm reading a complex article in Spanish, I can't stop to look up 30 different pictures of abstract concepts like democracy or efficiency.
It sounds tedious. Yeah.
Right. A dictionary gives me the exact answer in 2 seconds. Doesn't this image method completely destroy your reading momentum?
In the short term, absolutely. It is incredibly frustrating at first, and it does disrupt your momentum. But you have to ask yourself what your actual goal is.
Okay, fair point.
Is it finishing the article today or effortlessly remembering the vocabulary tomorrow? When you use a text dictionary, you are engaging a very shallow level of cognitive processing.
Right.
But when you drop a word into an image search, you force your brain to scan a grid of visual realities. Even for abstract concepts like efficiency, an image search often brings up, visual metaphors that the native culture uses for that concept.
Like gears fitting perfectly together, or a clock, maybe?
Exactly. You are essentially forcing your adult brain to mimic how a toddler learns their first language.
So it's about recreating that primary sensory-based environment. I mean, a parent doesn't hand a 2-year-old a translation matrix.
Well, definitely not.
They point at a dog and say dog, and the child links the sound directly to the furry, barking creature.
Yes. And from a neurological standpoint, visual processing engages entirely different areas of the cortex than text processing. When you wire the sound of a new word directly to a visual stimulus, you are building a much thicker, a much more robust neural pathway.
Okay, so I'm using Google Images. I've got a mental picture of an apple, a dog, and a car. But if I try to talk to a barista and I'm just, flashing a slideshow of isolated JPEGs in my head, I'm still going to freeze.
Right, because isolated words aren't a language.
Exactly. Single words don't make a conversation. What is the bridge between a static image and an actual flowing sentence? How do we build that flow without stuttering and stopping every 3 seconds?
Well, this is where the source introduces a behavioral shift to handle syntax, moving from solitary building blocks to actual architecture.
Oh, right. They call it the narration technique.
Yes, that's the one.
Essentially, to build this flow, you have to actively become the main character of your own movie. And you do this by talking to yourself out loud throughout the day, narrating your life in your target language.
It's a really powerful tool.
But I have to play devil's advocate here, because this sounds like a recipe for disaster. Walking around my empty apartment, saying out loud, I am picking up my keys, I'm walking to the door. First of all, it feels inherently silly.
It does feel very silly at first.
But more importantly, without a teacher standing there with a red pen to correct my grammar, aren't I just reinforcing my own bad habits? I mean, if I'm conjugating verbs incorrectly every single day to myself, won't I just lock in a terrible way of speaking?
That is the assumption most adult learners make, yeah. But the reality of how language acquisition works is actually quite different. This raises an important question about what we are actually prioritizing.
Okay, what should we be prioritizing?
At this stage, we aren't aiming for academic perfection. We are aiming for automated flow. By talking to yourself, you are practicing what linguists call high-frequency grammar.
High-frequency grammar, like the common stuff.
Exactly. These are the basic sentence structures you use hundreds of times a day. Things like, I am going, I need, where is, I want.
The functional, everyday stuff.
Yeah. Think of high-frequency grammar like the foundational bass line of a jazz song.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Right. You're just learning the bass line, the I am, I want, I go. Once that bass line is pure muscle memory, you have the cognitive bandwidth to improvise the complex solos on top without losing the rhythm.
So the grammar comes later.
The grammatical corrections can come later, yes.
Yeah.
But first, you need the underlying rhythm to become automatic.
To be fair to the listener, though, the first time you try to narrate making your morning coffee, it's not going to feel like a smooth jazz bass line.
Oh, not at all.
It's going to take you 5 agonizing minutes just to formulate the sentence, I am pouring the milk.
It will be slow, yes. But the magic isn't that it's instantly easy. The magic is the environment you are doing it in.
What do you mean?
Well, when you try to speak to a native speaker, your heart rate elevates, your cortisol levels spike. The brain shifts into a mild fight-or-flight state, which means it is prioritizing immediate social survival over long-term learning.
Because you're stressed about looking foolish.
Exactly. High cortisol literally shuts down neuroplasticity.
Wow. Wait, really? So the anxiety is physically blocking your brain from learning the language?
Precisely. By narrating your day aloud, alone in your kitchen, you remove the social cortisol spike. You keep your brain in a relaxed parasympathetic state.
The safe zone.
Yes. Without the pressure of a human waiting for your response, your brain actually feels safe enough to form new neural pathways. You're giving yourself the necessary time to fumble through the syntax without the cognitive penalty of anxiety.
And there is another layer to this technique from the source that just blew my mind, and it has to do with contextual memory. Because when you are narrating your day, you will inevitably hit a wall.
Oh, constantly.
You'll be looking out the window, narrating a rainy morning, and you'll realize, wait, I have absolutely no idea how to say umbrella.
And that moment of friction is incredibly valuable. It is the perfect learning opportunity.
Because you don't just write umbrella down on a list to study next week. You look it up, maybe on Google Images, right then and there.
Right in the moment.
And the source argues that your brain remembers that word almost effortlessly going forward compared to memorizing umbrella off a flashcard on a Tuesday night. But why is that so much more effective?
Because of how the hippocampus weaves memories together. When you're trying to remember the word umbrella while looking at real rain, your brain isn't just processing black and white text on a flashcard.
It's taking in everything.
Yes. It's processing the actual temperature of the room. It's processing the sound of the water hitting the glass. It's processing the mild, very real frustration of potentially getting your clothes wet.
So it's a full body experience. Exactly.
Yeah.
You are giving the hippocampus 5 different sensory strings to pull on to retrieve that memory later, rather than the single fragile string of a sterile textbook definition.
Contextual memory. The word is solving a real-time problem for you in your actual environment.
And when a piece of vocabulary solves an immediate physical problem, the brain tags that information as vital for survival and stores it much deeper.
Okay, so we are bypassing the internal translator by linking sounds directly to images. We are building the foundational jazz bass line of conversation by narrating our daily lives in a low-cortisol environment.
That's the foundation, yes.
But here is the inherent flaw with any new habit decay. How do we stop these new neural pathways from fading away if we take a week off from practicing? How do we make this remodel permanent?
This is the ultimate differentiator between learners who plateau at an intermediate level and those who achieve native-level effortless speaking.
Okay.
And that differentiator is emotion.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this highlights the stark contrast between traditional classroom learning and actual human biology.
Completely different things.
Think about the sentences you read in a beginner's textbook. The book is on the table. The boy has a red ball. You read it, you mentally translate it, you understand it, and you forget it 10 minutes later. Why? Because absolutely nobody cares that the book is on the table. There are 0 stakes.
There is no emotional resonance at all. And from a neurological standpoint, textbook learning is a massive missed opportunity. If we look at the biology of learning, the brain is simply not designed to remember neutral data.
So explain that mechanism. What is actually happening in the brain when we care versus when we don't?
It comes down to the relationship between 2 specific areas: the amygdala, which processes emotion, and the hippocampus, which forms new memories.
Okay, the emotion center and the memory center.
Right, and they sit right next to each other in the brain for a reason. When you are experiencing intense emotion, joy, anger, sadness, adrenaline, the amygdala essentially floods the brain with neurochemicals like dopamine and norepinephrine.
And what does that do?
This chemical bath acts like a highlighter pen for the hippocampus. It tells the brain whatever is happening right now is highly emotional, which means it is critical for survival. Record this permanently.
So an emotionally hot brain physicalizes the memory in a way a neutral brain just can't.
When the brain is hot, the neural pathways being built are physically thicker and more durable.
Yeah.
Rote memorization is like trying to brute force a computer password.
It's hard work.
Yes. But emotional memory is like remembering the exact layout of your child at home. It's effortless because it's tied to feeling.
And the source gives some incredibly fun, specific examples of how to artificially create these hot environments for yourself to basically hack your language learning.
Oh, I love these examples.
They call it finding your hook. For instance, instead of reading a dry dialogue about ordering a train ticket, you learn vocabulary by watching a movie in your target language that legitimately makes you cry.
Or playing a high-stakes, cooperative video game with native speakers where you are forced to communicate quickly to survive a digital threat.
That sounds intense.
It is. The adrenaline is pumping. The stakes feel intensely real to your nervous system. And if you learn the word for duck or run or behind you in that panicked moment, you will never, ever forget it. The amygdala won't let you.
Yes. Or, if you are incredibly passionate about food, don't read a boring article about kitchen vocabulary. Watch high-intensity cooking reality shows where the chefs are screaming at each other about burnt risotto. The emotion is palpable.
It really is.
The source even suggests something wild that I kind of love. Trying to vent or complain in your target language when you are genuinely angry about something in your real life, the emotion is already surging through your body. You are just, channeling it through a new linguistic filter.
It's about hijacking your existing passions and your natural emotional states. You're tricking your brain into forgetting that it is studying because it is too busy reacting to the intense emotional stimulus.
The source provided an analogy for this that I think perfectly grounds everything we've talked about today. They said the difference between rote textbook memorization and this kind of emotional anchoring is like the difference between just reading a map and actually driving the car.
It's a vital distinction
Yeah.
because one is theoretical and the other is experiential.
Right. You can stare at a paper map of a city for hours. You can memorize the street names. You can see where the left and right turns are. But the second you fold up the map and step out onto the actual street, you are completely lost.
Oh, definitely. You have no real sense of the place.
But if you actually drive the route, I mean, if you physically feel the resistance of the steering wheel as you turn left, if your heart rate spikes when someone cuts you off, if you feel the deep frustration of sitting in a traffic jam on 4th Street, and then the genuine relief of finally finding a parking spot.
Then you know the route.
Exactly. You know the route. It becomes second nature. You have to physically and emotionally feel the turns of the language for it to become yours.
When you feel the language, you aren't processing it as abstract data anymore. You are processing it as a lived experience. And that is what definitively shatters the internal translator.
Okay, we have covered some heavy neurological ground here today. Let's do a quick, logical recap of this toolkit for you to take away. Step 1. You have to stop translating words into your native tongue and start visualizing them.
Ditch the bilingual dictionary.
Ditch it completely. Stop building detours and use image searches to link the auditory sound directly to the physical object in reality.
And step 2, build the jazz bass line of your conversational flow by becoming the main character of your day. Use the narration technique to practice high-frequency grammar out loud.
Right. Talking to yourself.
Yes. Doing this alone in a low-cortisol environment allows your brain to safely automate sentence structures without the neuroplasticity-killing anxiety of social judgment.
And step 3, find your hook and make the brain hot. Ditch the boring textbooks with zero stakes and anchor your new vocabulary to real, intense emotions. Whether that's through tear-jerking movies, adrenaline-fueled video games, or even your own daily frustrations. Drive the car. Don't just read the map.
Now, it's important to ground this in reality, though. The source material makes it clear that this kind of deep biological rewiring does not happen overnight.
Right, it's a process.
You aren't going to narrate your breakfast for a weekend and wake up fluent on Monday. However, they note that consistently practicing these specific techniques for just 15 minutes a day allows neurogenesis to compound over time, leading to a very tangible milestone.
Yes, the ultimate milestone. The ultimate sign that the remodel was successful and you have finally arrived in your new language. According to the source, you will know what has happened when you begin to actually dream in that language.
Which makes perfect biological sense. When you are asleep and dreaming, your conscious control is completely shut off. The internal translator, which requires active conscious effort to run, is powered down.
It's offline.
Exactly. If the language is naturally showing up in your dreams, it means the vocabulary has successfully bypassed the middleman and integrated deep into your subconscious architecture.
It's the ultimate proof that you aren't just wearing the language, you are living in it.
It becomes a part of your automated self.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought, something to really mull over as you go about your day. We've talked about how mastering a new language using these specific methods requires you to actively bypass your native tongue.
Right.
It requires you to vividly visualize objects in a totally new way and to anchor these new sounds to intense personal emotional experiences. So if you are doing all of that, does learning a second language through these methods actually unlock a completely different version of your personality?
That's fascinating.
I mean, think about it. If you are bypassing the very words, syntax, and cultural metaphors that shaped who you are in your mother tongue, and you are building entirely new emotional pathways to process the world, are you, in a way, building a new you that only exists when you speak that specific language?
That is a profound question. It suggests that true fluency isn't just a tool for communication, but an actual expansion of human identity.
Exactly. So we want to say a massive thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you take these tools, go test these theories out in your own life, and maybe discover a new part of yourself along the way. Because life is too short to walk around with the gears grinding in your head, feeling like you're reading a textbook just to order a coffee. It's time to close the book, look at the world, and just start talking. Until next time.